Hello, and welcome to your reservation for one. Do you find yourself feeling that you have a plethora of friends, but you're still alone on weeknights and weekends while everyone else is out having fun? You aren't getting invited, but you always invite others to your events. Feels like things are a little lopsided and not reciprocal. Our entree tonight will feature a discussion about reciprocity and friendship. Our hostess will get you seated in a moment. Thank you for choosing a table for one for your soul dining experience. Hello and welcome to Table for One. I'm your hostess, Jerisha. Follow me and let me get you seated. Here's our menu, and our entree tonight is a discussion about reciprocity and friendship. This was a topic that I wanted to talk about, and it actually was prompted by something that just happened recently to me. But as I processed it with my soul sister, I realized that this actually is a long-standing pattern for me and has been a long-standing issue for me for pretty much all my life. And that is really understanding and balancing friendships with others. I have had difficulties since I was a young girl. So as I've gotten older, I have begun to learn that there are different types of friendships and there's different levels to friendships. However, every once in a while, I get in my feelings when I find out that someone that I thought was on a certain level of friendship with me perhaps does not have those same feelings for me, or perhaps the interest, the effort, the initiation that I'm putting forth in the relationship isn't being reciprocated. So I thought I'd talk about it a little bit. And part of it is just to hopefully see if there are other people who perhaps are experiencing these same issues, but also talking through things, saying them out loud, owning them sometimes makes it a lot easier to begin to really be introspective, insightful, and do some of the hard work that's necessary to make changes. So, let me give you a little bit of history about my friendship experiences. And I will put a disclaimer, it is not a fatal attraction, single white female situation, I promise you. If you know me, you know that if I consider you a friend, you basically are family. And I have had to learn that that is not always the case because not everybody has earned that privilege of being called family or the privilege of the level of access of being considered family gives you to me and the things that I share with those individuals who I consider family, close friends, best friends, etc. So probably within the last, maybe, I'd say maybe about 5 years, I've really been trying to hone in on having associates and learning what associates are and how that differs from friends, how that differs from close friends, and how that differs from best friends. And I think I've been doing really well within the past 3 years in managing associate friendship relationships. I found a great group of people through a community organization that I joined that have been wonderful to hang out with. And they gave me exactly what I was looking for in terms of a group of people to do things with. I get up on a Sunday and decide I want to do brunch. There's people that I can text and say, hey, what are you doing? You want to meet me? I decide I want to go see a movie after work. There's somebody who's interested in doing that. I want to catch a happy hour. I want to go see a concert and I don't want to go by myself. I want to take a road trip. I want to take a vacation. I want to go out of the country. And it has been a amazing experience. It has given so much value to my life to be able to have that experience. But I feel like I'm rushing a little bit in terms of how I got to that point. Why did I need to make those distinctions in the first place? My friendship history, if I go back to my days of being a young teen, I was someone who I would say I imprinted on people. And so I would find someone that I connected with and we jived and we just kind of fit like hand in glove. And for me, I was good. I didn't need anybody else. I had my one friend. That's all I needed. They were the end all to be all for me. And I struggled, of course, to find out that that friend had other friends. I wasn't their only friend, and that they actually wanted to spend time with those other people and not just me. So, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of tough conversations. Eventually, I realized that I needed to widen my perspective on friendship and what that meant. And I needed to look at why I locked into one person and was expecting one person to give me all of these things or to fill in all of these spaces that I felt that I had. So got through college, started living my adult life, got married, got divorced, and through that have made all kinds of different types of friendships. So over time I realized that I needed to ease up the grip on people that I considered friends because I was losing them. I was turning them away. I was turning them off. People were distancing themselves from me because being my friend was difficult. And it was a lot of pressure to be everything for me and to me. Then I got a divorce. And then I ended up in a different pool. I was no longer married. I was now the divorcee. I had a scarlet D on my forehead. And so when I hung out with people and friends, it was people always tell me they felt sorry for me, or I'm so sorry that that happened. And I wasn't sorry at all. It was actually one of the best things that happened to me is that I chose to end that relationship and move on with my life. So I felt oftentimes when I was around people in a social setting that they were wanting to be sympathetic to the fact that I had gotten divorced. I felt like I was the pariah or the one to be pitied in the group. I oftentimes felt like the third, fourth, fifth wheel in the group because my friends were still connected in their relationships. So I was just tagging along. So because of the way that my life track was going, I was getting more isolated from individuals who used to be my friends. So I found myself about 5 years ago saying, look, I got to do something about this. I need to find a way to make some connections because I still want to have friendships. And though these people were still folks in my life who, if I needed something, hands down, they would be there for me, I was missing just that day to day hey girl, let me give you some of this tea, or guess what happened, or hey girl, what are you doing after work, or hey, what are y'all doing this weekend, or so and so is playing at the Fillmore, you want to ride up? I was missing that. So that's when I took a chance, took a risk, and got involved in a community civic organization that had a social piece to it and met a group of folks that I love to death. And it helps me to meet that need that I have of socialization, of connections. And I actually have been blessed out of that group to have made some really great connections and some friendships that I feel have become extremely close. So that's my kind of quick in a nutshell appetizer journey of how I got to the place where I was needing to make some changes in the way that my friendships were going. But now to our entree, to our main dish, talking about this idea of reciprocity in friendship. Lately, I have noticed that some of the people that I know, and this is a disclaimer, please, anyone who's listening to this, do not feel that this is personalized in any way. All of the things that we talk about in Table for One are a amalgamation of my life experiences. So I am not talking about any particular person. End of disclaimer. But lately I have felt that I am noticing that in some of my relationships, I am not having the same reciprocity that and so that leads me to question, am I expecting too much? Am I being reasonable about how I expect people to show up for me in these associateships or friendship or close friendship? So I am motivated to do this deep dive after having a conversation with my good girlfriend who shared with me that a way to enhance my podcast would be for me to share more of my actual personal stories and to kind of get away from the safety of talking about generalities, but actually share some of myself with listeners. So I'm going to try it. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to open myself up. And I am going to talk specifically about a friendship experience that I had that really impacted me. And folks who know me probably know what I'm talking about. But definitely, there was a time frame for me where I really struggled with some of the boundaries of friendship and some of the things that occurred out of this friendship, respecting my personal space. So this person uh, would do that, and it would become very destructive in relationships. And for me, I'm like Michael Jackson. I'm a lover, not a fighter. So I didn't really do well with that type of back and forth and that triangulation and that level of drama and chaos in my life. So eventually this person stepped over a barrier or a boundary that I had and completely decimated it, and I was unable to come back from that. So the relationship had to end. But the impact of that relationship ending was something that surprised me how impactful it was. Some of those lessons literally, and I mean literally, brought me to my knees. I had to put my hand in the fire multiple times before I realized that I was getting severely burned. And in 2018 and 2019, I experienced these situations with this individual, and it just shook me to the core. It caused me to doubt everything that I believed about friendship, but even more sad, it caused me to really doubt myself. I began asking questions about if I was a good person. Did I do something to cause this mistreatment? Was I wrong to be feeling offended and hurt when my boundaries were not being respected? All these lessons taught me that I couldn't expect others to treat me well if I didn't require that treatment of myself first. I wasn't being a good friend to myself. I wasn't being loyal to myself or trustworthy. I wasn't being my own cheerleader or respecting my own boundaries. How could I expect somebody else to do so? I was allowing myself to be treated in ways that if I saw someone treating a friend of mine similarly, I'd be ready to throw hands. But I wasn't requiring anything, but I was giving an overabundance. I was depleting my reserves and I wasn't getting any replenishment from that relationship. I was emotionally exhausted. And as I struggled through these very painful moments, I vowed to myself that I wasn't going to let myself get in this situation again. So, what were some of the lessons that I learned? First lesson I learned: don't give someone a title if they have not earned it. In hindsight, I was throwing out the title of friend way too loosely. Knowing myself and how I interpret friendship from my past, to call somebody my friend really means for me that I consider this person as as close as family to me. So that means total transparency on my part, complete trust, and staunch loyalty. I was providing those benefits to some individuals who didn't warrant that level of treatment. So were there red flags? Aren't there always? Someone who was always calling on me for the bailout, to vent, to pat them on their back, to support them, cheerlead them. Yet when I looked for reciprocity, all I heard was a chorus of crickets. Had this person really earned the privilege of my friendship? Lesson number 2: don't go harder for them than they will for you. I was out here telling people how wonderful this person was. I was challenging the haters and naysayers. I was yelling from the mountaintops, "That's my best friend. That's my best friend." When the reality was, that person was actually talking very badly about me behind my back. And as word does, it did get back to me. And I was devastated. Why would a friend talk about me negatively to someone else? Why wouldn't they come to me if they had an issue? More importantly, why did their behavior have me questioning myself and trying to take responsibility by thinking I had done something wrong to cause this behavior? Lesson number 3: not everyone who says that they are for you are really for you. I saw a quote somewhere on the internet and it said, make sure everyone in your boat is rowing, not drilling holes when you're not looking. This word picture is so vivid for me because that's exactly what was happening. I had people in my inner bubble who were steadily poking holes in the sides. So as I gulped and gasped for air, I saw them with the scissors in their hands, but I didn't want to believe that they were the ones who were poking the holes. I was trying to see the best in people, but also trying to prove to myself that I hadn't been a misjudge of character. What did it say about me to have given someone that sacred space in my friend circle and then they turned out to be a horrible person? Lesson number 4: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And if you're resistant to believing what you see, believe what others see. It was like I was in a burning house and I was looking out the window and seeing my neighbors screaming for me to get out, and they were pointing at the roof. But because I was inside the house, I couldn't see the flames, so I didn't believe that there was a fire. People around me were giving feedback about certain people in my life. They were suggesting that I fall back or tread really lightly with these people. Many of them had cut off these people or drastically changed their relationships with them already due to their own experiences. Yet I blindly kept tumbling down the friendship hole, considering myself showing the utmost loyalty by defending these people to others. Never once did I ask myself if it was possible that I could be wrong about these people and that everyone around me might be right. So, did I learn my lesson? A quote from Felicia Rashad sticks in my mind, and it's actually one of my favorite quotes. It says, I can care about people without taking on their problems. The first step in my journey to heal was to get some space. I couldn't see the forest for the trees, and I had to take a step back to get some perspective. So I fell back into oblivion and I cut people out of my life. It was like the purge in my friendship network. That meant stopping communication, blocking on social media, asking mutual friends to not update me or pass messages to me about or from those people. I had to cut it off completely in order to give myself space to grieve. I acknowledged that losing that friendship as I knew it was indeed a loss. In that moment, I had to get space to gain perspective by removing myself completely. FOMO was kicking in big time, and I had to fight the urge to social media spy to see what was going on with others. Several times I got my feelings hurt through my investigations, so much so that I learned yet another lesson. You're going to find exactly what you're looking for if you keep looking. So I finally permanently blocked those individuals from social media. Secondly, I recognized my triggers and I attempted to avoid them. I stayed away from reminiscing. I stopped social media stalking. I excused myself from conversations about them, or I definitely changed the topic. I also did not respond to blatant attempts at baiting me, whether it was through subliminal posts online or word of mouth filtered through mutual friends. I enlisted the help of my village to help me get through the urges to contact or engage with those people. It was basically heroin withdrawal. I had to sit down and sweat it out. But I'm so thankful for my village who hung in there and listened to me lament repeatedly about the situations. I know they wanted to shake some sense into me, but they were so patient and loving. During this, I began to learn who really was for me. And I was able to assign the title of friendship to several in my circle with no hesitation that it was well deserved. I also learned that I had to have levels of friendship. Not everybody I meet deserves the title of close friend. I learned that having associates is perfectly fine. Superficial relationships that come together over common interest are enjoyable, and they don't have to be any more than that. My former idea that once a close friend, always a close friend was no longer the case. My friendship was no longer unconditional. There was one condition: treat me as well as I treat you. If that doesn't happen, then you're not a friend. And that's okay. I'm not Mr. Rogers. Everyone I meet doesn't need to be my neighbor. I was challenging this belief that boundaries in friendship was wrong or restrictive. It was actually protection. Finally, but not least, I chose me. For the first time, really ever, I began to move in a way that put my needs as the priority, not the needs of others. I became my own friend. I became content with spending time alone. I didn't always need to have a house full of people to feel whole. I began communicating genuinely with people in my life. If my feelings were hurt, I said so. If I didn't agree with something, I said so. If I didn't want to do something, I said so. If I didn't want to be around someone because I didn't care for their character, I didn't go. No more accepting invitations to events I knew I didn't want to attend because I was worried about the optics. I allowed space to grow and time to pass. Getting some space gave me a panoramic view. I saw very clear opportunities where I should have chosen myself over others. And I didn't take those opportunities. As time passed, the pain lessened, and I thought less and less of those people who were no longer in my life. Did my feelings for them disappear? Absolutely not. I still think of those people a whole lot. I miss them and the good times that we shared. I've reached out to them from time to time since our relationship changed to let them know they're on my mind and I hope that they're doing well. I've provided emotional support when they lost a loved one. All interactions on my terms, meeting my needs and within my boundaries. Others, I completely removed from my life. Did not choose to interact with them anymore, nor will I. Those relationships were not deemed worthy to attempt to repair. And that also is okay. They showed me who they were, and I decided I didn't like it. No hard feelings. It just wasn't a fit for me. I forgave for my benefit, not theirs, and I chose to move on without them. So, the bottom line, I'm not for everybody, and everybody isn't for me. I'm not going to click with everyone, and I don't have to force it if it doesn't fit. Not everyone gets to be family, and that's okay. It's okay to have associates. It's okay to set boundaries. It's okay to take space from relationships when they become overwhelming. It's more than okay to choose me. Well, I am sure you are full to the gills after listening to that story. So let's push back from the table while we clear your plates and get ready for our palate cleanser. Let's just take a breath for a moment. Might need to unbuckle your pants a little bit. I know it was a lot, but can you imagine what it was like to carry all of that around with me while I am still having to go to work? I'm still having to show up in my life while I internally was struggling with all of these things and feelings. I think it kind of puts into perspective that all of us are silently suffering and silently tackling challenges in our life that aren't visible to others. And I hope that it makes us all a little bit more empathetic when people aren't able to show up in a way that we're used to. So, for our palate cleanser tonight, I have an article from Psychology Today entitled Recognizing When a Friendship is Lopsided. This article, I think, touched me maybe a little too closely in terms of what it talked about regarding adult friendships. It first of all states that they are important and they're very important to our identity and sense of self, which I completely agree with. And it also acknowledged that it can be difficult to bring up the topic to a friend about changes that you're noticing in the relationship, changes that you're noticing in the level of reciprocity, changes that you're noticing in terms of the distance that you may start to feel between you two. And part of the reason why it's difficult to talk to a friend about it or to bring it up is that you don't want to seem needy. You don't want to seem like you're way too invested in the friendship than they are. And you don't want to make it seem like you think that they're your only friend and that you don't have the social skills necessary to widen your friendship network. Let's do a little bit of psychology here and talk about Emerson, who has a theory about friendship. Emerson was a social psychologist, and what Emerson stated was that there is a social concept of social exchange or reciprocity in relationships, and that this theory assumes that most people prefer when relationships are reciprocal, meaning both parties are giving and receiving about equally. And that if we notice a change in the levels of reciprocity, it can begin to feel like the relationship is one directional, that it's one sided, and that this imbalance might suggest that one person is more invested in the relationship and feels like the relationship benefits them than the other. So, in talking about relationships, Bleiser has a theory about relationship being in phases, and that there are three phases to relationships. The first phase to a friendship would be formation. And this is the phase where you're actually getting to know someone. You're moving from being a stranger to an acquaintance to actually friends with someone. You're letting the person get to know you. You're showing a little bit of vulnerability with this individual. You're going through some things with this person. And the levels of reciprocation are even because both of you are interacting and initiating connection in order to get to know one another. The next phase of friendship would be maintenance. And this is the phase where you are sustaining the friendship. There's going to be periods of time where both of you are engaged at the same level. There may be periods of time that's called benign neglect, where both parties are kind of infrequent with their contact with each other. But when reconnected, it feels like nothing has changed. You guys are easily able to slide back into your interaction and friendship groove. Now, during your life, there's going to be periods of time that may go by where the friendship is not as big a focus as it is in other periods of times. However, the maintenance stage is about how to make this a long lasting and long term relationship, which means there's going to be an ebb and flow in terms of reciprocation. Now, the final stage of the friendship would be considered the dissolution phase. And this is when the friendship dissolves either abruptly or over a course of time, when there is just waning interest and involvement in maintaining the relationship. You may notice that there are periods of time where there's no contact, that you're feeling more distance from this individual, that maybe there's a quarrel or some type of disagreement that causes the distance. But over time, it gets to a point where you and the other individual stop contacting each other, stop initiating with each other, rarely talk with each other. When we have a friendship that feels lopsided, we need to look at where we are in the phases of friendship. One of the reasons why it might feel lopsided is because one person is in a different phase than the other, or one person may have a higher expectation of what connection looks like in each of the phases than the other person. The difference in these expectations can lead to a lack of reciprocity or a perception of a lack of reciprocity, and then therefore an imbalance in the level of contact, initiating contact, maintaining contact. Some of the other reasons that the reciprocity might be an imbalance is because there could be unrealistic expectations for closeness by one party when one friend may be too emotionally needy, or there is an inaccurate reading or understanding of the level of closeness of this friendship. As I begin to look at why I have felt that some of my relationships are lopsided, what I have to do is, first of all, check and see if my expectation for the friendship, if my expectation for the level of connectivity matches that of the other person. And knowing what my habit or my pattern has been, it's quite easy for me to overestimate the level of connection, overestimate the level of importance and closeness of a relationship. Because I know that, I usually will sit back for a little bit in the cut and check the situation to make sure that the reality that I'm experiencing is really the reality that is happening. If after I do my self evaluation, I realize, okay, it's not me, I'm not rushing to closeness, I'm not rushing to make this more than it is, there is a definite difference in the level of give and take, reciprocity, and initiation in this relationship and inclusion in this relationship. Then I have to begin to think about what might be involved in this cooling off. What may be involved in this person moving differently with me. And I don't always think that it's me. Actually, the therapist in me will think about all the things that it might be other than me. Something's going on in their life. Maybe they've had some changes. Maybe there's some different circumstances. Maybe they are preoccupied with an intimate relationship, and or maybe they want to tell me that there's a difference in the relationship, but don't know how to say it. Think they might hurt my feelings. So I come up with all these other reasons that it might be, and in doing that, I try to put myself in a space to allow for some of these other scenarios, if they are true, to play out. So if I go through all those scenarios and I'm not able to really identify a place to kind of lay the blame, if you will, about why the relationship has changed, then you have to do this thing that I teach my clients, I try to live by, but it's hard, about radical acceptance. Accepting that a situation is what it is, and that I might not like it, and I might not agree with it, but I do have to accept that this is the reality right now. And one of the things that I have learned through the years as it relates to friendship is that some friendships are meant to be sustained throughout your entire lifetime, regardless if you are extremely close to that individual and you talk every day, or every couple months, every quarter, twice a year, you get together. Those relationships are solid. Those are people that you can rely on. Those are relationships that no matter how much time has passed, when you are together, you are as connected as you were when you were first in the relationship. Those are relationships that I treasure because those are my lifelong family. But I also, through the years, have come to find out that not all of my friendships are going to be at that level. Not everybody thinks the same way about connection and friendship as I do. And so others may decide that they have outgrown the friendship we have, or that it has changed in level of importance to them. And I have to accept that. I might not like it, especially if I'm not at that same understanding, if I'm not at that same willingness to make those changes in the relationship. I may struggle with that. But struggling against something that is already occurred or is inevitable to happen is like struggling against the wind. At some point, I have to allow myself to accept that it is what it is. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to fight the reality of the situation. I'll adjust myself accordingly. So for me, not being invited to someone's event when I have invited them multiple times to my events lets me know this person perhaps is not seeing me or at the same phase of friendship as I think we are. So now I will adjust myself. Is it tit for tat? No, I don't think so. I think it's more of matching energy, but not in the negative way that we start to use it, in recent times due to social media, etc. But matching the same level of effort that that person is putting forth, especially since I know my trigger is to overmatch, to go above and beyond. I really have to be careful to follow suit. So this tells me that perhaps this person doesn't need to be included in all of the things that I'm doing. I'll look and see the type of event that I got excluded from. Okay, that lets me know that they don't consider that for our phase of friendship. Okay. So if I were to plan a similar type of event, I may choose to match that effort and not invite them. Am I doing it out of nastiness? No. Am I doing it out of spite? No. I'm doing it out of a realization and acceptance of perhaps some boundaries that they have set. And they're sharing with me that this is as far as you and I go, Jerisha. And other people in my life go past this boundary with me. And I can't get into all of the semantics. I'm just going to accept radically that it is what it is and that these are the new boundaries of our relationship. Well, I hope that you really enjoyed your meal with us tonight at Table for One. Let's do a quick recap while I get your doggy bag ready. We talked about my experiences in the past with difficulties with my boundaries and friendship. Then I shared a personal experience of a very impactful relationship that really made me question a lot about myself, my ability to be a good friend, and the criteria that I was setting for myself for allowing others in my life to be friends. Finally, we cleansed our palate and we talked about an article from Psychology Today that shared with us information about reciprocity in friendships and if your friendships are lopsided. Talked about the phases of friendship that we go through and that part of the feeling of the imbalance could be related to you and the other individual having different perspectives of the phases of friendship, as well as being in different phases of the friendship. So for your doggy bag, I have to plug some of my favorite folks who are out here sharing really impactful messages through either podcast or other media platforms. First of all, my other podcast, Family Values, is available on all platforms where you listen to your podcast. Come check me and my family members out as we talk about all kinds of issues that concern us regarding love, life, relationships, finances, social issues, politics, movies, music, etc. Of course, my good girlfriend Tika has a wonderful podcast, So Here We Are, which is available on all platforms where you listen to your podcast. Please tune into her and get some of that warm, buttered, yummy goodness for your soul. And finally, I'd like to introduce a new piece in your doggy bag, which is another good girlfriend. Her name is Crystal Dorsey, and she's the CEO and founding editor of Uplift Opportunity Career Services, LLC. Her career services and media platforms specialize in the needs of first-generation and underrepresented minorities. You can find her at her blog at Crystal, and that's spelled KRYSTLE, Dorsey.com/blog. Or you can follow her on IG and Twitter at KDuplifts_you. Hopefully when you get home and you have a chance to digest this full meal, you'll be interested in getting into that doggy bag and checking out some other sources of uplifting, encouragement, empowerment for your soul. Thank you again for choosing to dine with us tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again at Table for One.